Oh, good. All right, good afternoon. Today is Tuesday, July 28th. It is 4:45 p.m. and we are calling this regular meeting of the City Plan Commission to order. Let's start with a roll call.
Noel Sanchez, Dave Caldwell.
Sid McKenna.
Shoyan Manjrekar, DPD staff.
Bob Azar, DPD staff.
Megan DeSanto, legal counsel.
And I am Michael Gazdacko, Chair. We are going to go to the minutes from the June 16th, 2026 meeting. You all should have received them in advance of this meeting. If you have any edits or comments, feel free to chime in. Otherwise, we entertain a motion to approve as drafted.
Motion to approve.
We have a second?
Second.
All right. Fully formed motion. All in favor of the minutes as drafted, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The minutes pass. Moving along to director's report.
Just a quick note that we have hired a planning technician to replace our good friend Lev Simon. Blake Horn is in the back of the room waving.
Hi, Blake.
Welcome to Blake. So hopefully that will help an awful lot with some of the backlog of work that we have. But that's about it.
Big shoes to fill, literally.
Yeah.
Blake. So, moving right along to the agenda. We're going to take the first item out of order. We're going to jump to agenda item number 2, which is a minor land development project, case number 26-047 MIL 203 Douglas Ave. We are continuing this to the August 18th meeting at the applicant's request. So I think just for housekeeping purposes, we should take a vote and a motion to continue. Second, and we'll just all take it else.
Make a motion.
Second.
All right.
To the August.
To the August.
August 18th.
Still second.
Still second.
All right. All in favor of continuing, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? We are continuing that matter at the applicant's request. I hope we have that in writing.
Yeah.
To the August 18th meeting. Now back to agenda item number 1. Referral number 3618. It's rezoning of 1331 Eddy Street.
Sure, and commissioners, this is a request to rezone residents, the subject property at 1331 Eddy Street from R3 to RP.
Turn
The-
on your mic and speak closer to it, please.
Sure, the petitioner is requesting this rezoning to RP because they wish to live in the residence and also have business on the first floor, beauty salon or office, and were among the choices that they mentioned. So this is on Eddy Street, an area that's already exhibits a lot of mixed use and commercial, and I'm not sure if the applicant's in the audience or on Zoom, but we can hear from them. They are.
Is Lindsay Morel here?
Is anyone representing the applicant?
Anyone representing Lindsay Morel, either in person or online?
It's kind of odd.
Yeah, that's kind of odd. I mean, in the interest of not wanting to have to prolong this one, I'll just make a note that as Choyan said, this little stretch of Eddy Street has a number of properties that have commercial activities happening in them, either grandfathered or by variance. And I can pull up the zoning map and show you. So it is a residential zone. But you can see that it's just off of Broad Street, and it's just off of a section of C2 zoning. The request here is to go to RP so that there could be some small scale commercial uses there. I will also show you on Street View. Yeah, is Lindsay Morel in the audience?
It's a new
No.
members, okay.
Okay, we'll just show you that. So this is the subject property here. I have this up on the screen, and you can see across the street there are two buildings with commercial uses here, and then this is where we have a commercial zone just a couple of doors up, and you see that in many cases these are houses that have commercial activity. So the idea here is residential professional. It's not a commercial zone, it's still a residential zone. The bulk and the height, setback, impervious surface, and so forth are all the same for residential professional compared to R3. So in this case, there is not currently commercial activity happening on this property, but given its location on Eddy Street in proximity to these other commercial areas, it would seem that this would be a minor zoning change. So that's our take on this.
And then if they were successful at city council, in getting this zone change, if they pull the permit, they'd have to come up to compliance for the zone. Right?
Yes.
With impervious and things like that.
They would.
Okay,
But I think they comply anyway.
okay.
Is the building across the street zone commercial?
It's not. It's zoned residential. So this would have been by variance, likely, these commercial uses. And we prefer not to have people apply for use variances anymore. The preferred route is through a zoning change. And that's what the comprehensive plan says.
Any other questions, commissioners? Okay, gotta read the staff report.
Sure. So commissioners, as you saw, this area is one that is residential, but characterized by a number of mixed-use properties. You saw commercial on the ground floor, retail, as well as a gas station in proximity. So given this mix of uses, we feel that it would be appropriate to rezone the subject lot to RP, especially when you consider the future land use map of the comprehensive plan, which, as you know, is intended to be general enough to support a number of uses and is also not intended to be parcel specific. And also the map shows it's one where medium density residential is located in proximity to neighborhood commercial and mixed use. So therefore would be consistent with the intent of the comp plan as well as section 101 of the ordinance, which allows for a range of uses and an intensity that is appropriate to the neighborhood's character. And based on that, we would recommend that you make a positive recommendation to the council to approve this change.
Okay, public hearing, so well, we don't have to take public comment, I believe, on this one, but we will. If anyone here is interested in chiming in on referral number 3618, we will open public comment for this agenda item, rezoning of 1331 Eddy Street. Anyone here in the physical room who wishes to speak on this, please stand up and come to the podium. They're joining us in the virtual room. Please raise your virtual hand or press *9 if you're calling in. And seeing none, we will close the public comment portion of this agenda item. I have no issue with this zone change. I just would recommend that the applicant, actually attend the city council hearing when this goes before them. But other than that, I have no issue with this. It seems in keeping with the area and the neighborhood.
Make the motion that the CPC recommends approval of the proposed zone change to the city council.
Here we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we'll go around and do a vote. Lindsay?
Agree. I forgot what I think. Aye.
Noel?
Aye. Aye.
Dave? Sid? And I vote aye.
Correct.
All right. Best of luck, Lindsay Morrell. On to agenda item number 3, since we already handled number 2. This is another city council referral. This is referral number 3619. It's the Student Housing Growth Control Ordinance.
Okay, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I'll be taking this one. I'm going to share my screen and do a presentation for you.
Like presentations.
All right. Okay, bear with me just a minute.
Screen.
Yeah, I need to, I think I can screen sharing. And then if I just pull this over and I present. Okay, that is not. Okay, well, I think I apologize that I think this will be fine.
Okay.
Okay. So here's the general context behind this proposal. We have seen some neighborhoods where there are very high concentrations of students. High density student housing is one of those land uses that challenges our traditional land use practices in residential zones. And the comprehensive plan identifies that if it's not well managed, high density student housing can have negative effects on long-term residents and can hinder the development and preservation of affordable housing. As you know, we have some very minor regulation of student housing, but again, the comprehensive plan suggests that there may be a need for more restrictions. We know that there are thousands of students living off campus. We know that students have a lifestyle that's different, sometimes from what we would call non-student residents. That there may be conflicts, and specifically in the vicinity of Providence College, there are entire houses, entire streets, entire blocks occupied exclusively by high concentrations of students. And also in the vicinity of Providence College, there have been some demolitions and new construction for purpose-built student housing. And there's a concern here that this is just going to continue. We've heard a lot of calls to regulate student housing. We've had some proposals over the years that have not seen success. But we're back again, having worked with Councilor Shelley Peterson. The goal here is to create some new regulations for high density student housing where it's incompatible with stable residential neighborhoods, and to create some predictability regarding where off-campus student housing should be most concentrated and where it should not. So our analysis basically started here. Providence College in the middle of this map and this blue line showing about a half a mile away from Providence College. This is pretty much where students want to live, either on campus or close to campus. And where do they currently live in high concentrations? First of all, right on campus, Providence College has a number of dormitories where students live. And in fact, we permit high-density student housing on campus. Okay, we recognize that Providence College doesn't house all of its students. No school in Providence does. There are places, there are a good number of students who live off campus. So students also live in high concentrations in commercial zones, and you see surrounding the Providence College campus, there are some commercial zones, Douglas, Admiral, Smith Street, and so forth. And in fact, we do allow and encourage high-density student housing in commercial zones. This is an image of 257 Thayer Street. It's a 4-story purpose-built student building. And I have never heard of a complaint from anybody about student behavior at this building, or for that matter, any of the large apartment buildings in the vicinity of this building. So from my perspective, this is a good way to house students. Now, students also live in high concentrations in residential zones, in houses. And, the image here is kind of the classic image of student housing in the vicinity of Providence College. I believe this is Eaton Street, which runs just along the southern border of Providence College, sort of southeast of the campus, where you see the larger bubble. And in fact, many of these houses in this bubble are exclusively students, and in fact, the bubble extends down to Smith Street, or not the bubble, but student housing extends down to Smith Street. So right now, in these areas, these are generally 3-family zones. We don't have any restrictions on the concentration of students. We do have a current regulation that says you can have the current student regulation only applies to single-family houses in single-family zones. We'll talk about that in a minute. These are not in single-family zones. So these are the 3 places where we expect to see students in high concentration, or where we do see students in high concentrations: on campus, in the commercial zones, and in some residential zones near the campus. This is the zoning map. So you see the institutional zone, you see the commercial zone, and this darker yellow is the 3-family zone. The lighter yellow is the single-family zone. The single-family zone, there is a rule currently that says in a single-family house, in a single-family zone, no more than 3 students are allowed to live in a dwelling unless it's owner-occupied. If it's owner-occupied, we don't particularly care, because there's a presumption that the owners are gonna have control over the student behavior in the house. But if it's not owner-occupied, and if it's a single-family house, no more than 3 students. By the way, if you have a 2-family house or a 3-family house in this R1 zone, no regulation. Okay, so the current student regulation is pretty narrowly tailored. And in the R3 zone, no regulation, and that has allowed for the high concentration of students you see in the existing older triple deckers, and the demolition and new construction of the same house over and over again that's housing 14, 15, 16, 17 students. There are some streets where every house was demolished and new houses replaced them. and you know, for hundreds of students. Okay, so what do we propose? The idea here is that we would create an overlay district that would sit on top of the R3 zone in certain areas, and we would say, these are the student areas, and we are going to lightly regulate the concentration of students in these areas. Now, outside of those areas, we need to create some regulation because, as you'll recall, in the R3 zone, even in parts of the R1 zone where you don't have single-family homes, there's no regulation regarding students. So what we propose is an overlay district that would be roughly half a mile away from Providence College, where we would have stricter regulations. So looser regulations in the red areas, stricter regulations outside of the red areas, but in the blue area. Okay. This concept gets translated into a zoning map that looks like this, where you have the red areas drawn, you know, at the parcel level around these R3 areas to the southeast of Providence College, along Douglas, some areas of Douglas, some areas of Admiral that are zoned R3. And then you've got this larger area, again, sort of, it's not a circle anymore, but it sort of follows streets. It goes around commercial and open space zones and so forth. But essentially, this is the buffer zone. So in the red, what we're calling the College Student Residential Overlay District, you could have up to 5 students per dwelling unit. Why 5? Because it dovetails with the new state law that says that that no more than 5 unrelated people can live together in a dwelling unit. So what this would say is within the red, up to 5 students per dwelling unit. What does that mean for a triple decker? 3 units, 15 students in the building, say. Outside of the red, but inside of the blue, up to 3 students per dwelling unit, unless it's owner occupied. And we would carry through the single family rule, no more than 3 in a single family zone. But even in areas of R3, no more than 3 per dwelling unit, no more than 6 on the entire property. So if you have a triple decker, no more than 6. If you have a 10 unit, no more than 6. Okay. If you have a 1 unit, no more than 3. And that's it. That's the proposal. And the idea is that this would be sort of a pilot in the Providence College area, where we're hearing the most urgent concerns. It doesn't mean that we wouldn't apply something like this in the College Hill area, where we also have some places with high concentrations of students, but we thought we would try this here. So with that, I think we're open to having some discussion.
Well, commissioners, do you have questions of Mr. Bazar before there is some public interest in this as well, so we will hear from the public as well. This, questions for Bob?
Do we have data on the makeup of the homes in the buffer zone? I know you said if it's a 10-unit house, you have 6 students. I don't think there's any 10-unit dwellings in that area, but do we have data on how many multifamily homes, 3-unit homes will end up being regulated to 6 occupants total?
We don't have that data right now, but that is something that we could get. that particular area of, within that large, um, buffer, um, within the large buffer, as you see, the sort of southern area is mostly single family zone. This is fairly homogeneous single family. There are, as you get sort of closer to the R3 here, you do see twos and threes. And this little area of R3 might have some three family. There's some residential professional along here. Anecdotally, I would say that in the R3 zone north of Admiral Street, it's a fair mix of one, twos, and threes for the most part. But yeah, we don't have the numbers, but we could generate those.
Go right ahead. Dave.
Are there any other cities that you looked at? Models or anything analogous elsewhere in the country that, have dealt with this issue?
Yeah, I don't have specific names offhand, but we have done extensive research, and whenever there is a regulation that deals with students, it's always either the number of students or some kind of buffer, some kind of overlay zone, or some combination of both of those. That's the standard practice for communities regulating students. Some places have sort of a citywide regulation, no more than X number of students citywide. Others focus it to certain areas, but this is pretty much the way it's done. Some communities try to regulate the number of students through the unrelated persons rules, but we have the idea of regulating numbers of students that we put into place years ago. We did that specifically to avoid dealing with the unrelated persons rule, because we wanted to focus on students. We didn't want to focus on, say, blended families or some kind of household composition that might sort of get caught up in the regulation of students, which is what we're trying to do. So and your council has a lot of experience with litigating this ordinance. It has been litigated. It went all the way to the Rhode Island Supreme Court. We expect that this will probably be litigated if it passes through the city council. So we've been very careful to sort of follow the lead of what we had done before, but simply expand its applicability.
That was directly leading into two parts of my questions. Megan, what's your opinion? And do you think this is something that will withstand an appeal or a suit against it? I assume there's probably some landlords that would try to get this overturned if it is successfully passed. I know we have a student is defined in our zoning code. It's undergraduate student, not obviously this doesn't count towards graduate students, and you've been involved in a lot of the litigation already. So how do you think this looks?
Yes, thanks, Michael. It's always hard to predict what sort of legal challenge arguments could be made. And it's always hard to predict what a court will do. But I have worked with the planning department, as Bob said, to try to ensure that whatever additional regulation is imposed on student housing is consistent with the decision we received in our favor from the Rhode Island Supreme Court years ago when they upheld the current student housing regulation that's in place. The Supreme Court agreed with us that the regulation is subject to, in lawyer speak, rational basis review, which is for lack of a better word, a relatively low bar when it comes to what the city needs to do to ensure that its regulation is constitutional. Essentially, if there's a rational basis for the regulation, it should withstand constitutional scrutiny. I'm not sure what other arguments might be made, and I don't like to speculate because I also don't want to make the arguments for a future litigant. But I've researched student housing regulations all over the country. And we've tried to find one that is the most rationally related to the legitimate concerns and problems that we are having here in Providence. And I feel very strongly that our department would be able to defend the ordinance as proposed. Again, there's never any guarantees.
Thank you. I guess the next few questions are all sort of interrelated, and these are more towards Bob. How would we as a city measure the success of this? How long would it be before we look back and see if it is measuring up against those matrix? And then how long after that would it be to roll out elsewhere in the city if this is successful? Because I'm hoping that it is.
That's a really good question. So what I would say is that I would consider this to be a success if the student landlords conduct business within the places where we tell them they should be conducting business, which is in the overlay district, the student overlay district, and in the commercial zones. And that would mean constructing apartment buildings in the commercial zones and buying properties in the overlay zone and building and or occupying those existing buildings with students. I would consider it a success if we see student landlords selling properties that are not in the overlay zone, but in this buffer overlay. And I would consider it a success if we had fewer complaints about student behavior. Now, I do want to be realistic about this, and I want you to know that zoning can only do so much. It's a very powerful tool for regulating what can be built where and how big that building can be and how it is sited on a lot and so forth. But zoning says nothing about alcohol use. It says nothing about noise. It says nothing about on-street parking and on-street parking violations. Those quality of life issues are regulated differently under different ordinances and are enforced not by the zoning official, but typically by the police department. So, you know, we have to be realistic about it, and you know, it is true that you could have a nuisance house with 2 students in it, or you could have a nuisance house with 0 students in it. But I will say that there is something qualitatively different about the student housing, the high concentration of student housing in this area. And I will just, you know, tell you my experience from seeing it firsthand. on a very busy Saturday with an event happening at Providence College. I was invited by the family of a student to spend a little time over in that area, and I spent some time in the backyard of a house, or all of the houses between Eaton Street and Liege. The entire area between all of the houses on Eaton Street and all of the houses on Liege is one big open space, and it was, uh, a dozen parties all happening at the same time. And multiply that by, a bunch of other streets. It had the feel of an outdoor festival. And if you're participating in that outdoor festival, you're having a great time. If you're not, and you don't appreciate the noise and the other things that go along with it, then it's a problem. If you're trying to live a peaceful life in that area and you don't want to be bothered by this kind of behavior, it's a problem. So, maybe some measure of success might be that some people decide that they don't want to live in that area anymore. And that's a difficult decision. We're already seeing that happen regardless, because there's no regulation. We've seen in the past couple of years, every house on Lee Street and now approaching every house on Venice Street being bought up and turned into high density housing, and it's just marching its way up along adjacent to Admiral Street. So the purpose of this is to contain that and stop that sprawl.
Zoning can have a long lead where you don't see, because market forces will take place, and this doesn't happen overnight. So how long do you think it would be before we roll this out somewhere else if this is seen as being successful?
Well, I think that has something to do with the desire of residents and elected officials in
other areas.
In other areas.
Fair
And
enough.
I think we'll hear from some of those tonight.
Okay, that's fair.
How do they plan to enforce this?
That's a very good
Really
question.
good question.
What I'll say is that our inspectors, our zoning inspectors who work for the Department of Inspection and Standards, have some power, but they're not all powerful. Without being invited into an apartment, they're not allowed to simply walk into a unit. They can ask questions, but the occupants of the units can decline to answer those questions. The way the existing student regulation is enforced is typically by a complaint based system, where if someone has reason to believe that there are more than 3 students living in a single family zone, in a single family house, perhaps there are always 4 cars in the driveway, and they see the same 4 people coming and going all the time. They can file a complaint, and the Department of Inspection and Standards can send a letter to the landlord and say, by information and belief, it appears that you have 4 students living here. Please tell us otherwise. And that has actually been successful in a number of occasions. There are because the nature of the real estate market in this area is such that there are a relatively small handful of landlords who own all of the student housing in that area. Call it 90% of the student housing in that area is controlled by probably 5, 6 landlords. Probably some of whom are in this room, and certainly many of whom will be at the city council if this comes up, if and when this comes up for a hearing. The word will be out, and we will expect them to comply. And you know, if they don't want to comply, they know how to challenge an ordinance, and they'll probably do that as well.
So, two questions. One, so do we think that this ordinance will push the development into the commercial zone around PC as it's happening?
Yeah, it's happening already, and we think that's a distinct possibility. You know, you never know what land is going to be available, but you know, it seems like for the right price, people will sell in this area, and you know, I would maintain that you could probably house all of the off-campus students who want to live in this area in large apartment buildings in the commercial zones that already exist. And you know, maybe there's an opportunity to even expand some of the commercial zones. Providence College doesn't have the same kind of, you know, large-scale commercial strip that you see on Thayer Street. Why not? Maybe that's a possibility with lots of students living there with lots of customers for retail on the ground floor. So that certainly there's a possibility. I also think that students will continue to live in houses as they do today. So you'll have a mix.
And my other question is the PC setting.
I have heard from PC, and they have told me that they support this kind of regulatory scheme.
Do you know, are you done?
I'm done.
Do you know if PC has adequate housing on campus?
They house their policy is that students through the third year need to live on campus, and after that they don't guarantee on-campus housing. That's relatively that is similar to other schools, although as a percentage, PC houses more of their students on campus than any other college in the city. Yes, and they are in per their most recent institutional master plan. They're planning to build another dormitory on campus. You know,
And to add to that, when they came with their master plan, did they explain to us that it's not just PC students?
That's true. Yes, that's an important point. It has become somewhat of a magnet for students at other schools, Johnson and Wales, maybe Rhode Island College, even a handful of Brown students, I think, live in some of these houses. That's a fact. And again, this is a proposed student overlay zone that might actually even magnify the magnet effect, where it would be an attract. I think that certainly the landlords are agnostic as to what school the students are coming from. And yeah, that is certainly a possibility.
Yeah, you weren't here for their last IMP, but they've been in front of us, you know, every handful of years with their plans, and they actually do a pretty good job of regulating off-campus violations. They have a disciplinary committee where it actually carries into their scholastic activities as well. So they do the best they can. They don't know everything around them, and they're again are market forces that are driving this, and regulation is needed. You've driven through there lately. as I do on like a
And I-
weekly
and I think
basis.
social media doesn't help.
No, it
You
doesn't.
See it on
You're right.
TikTok and then people literally want to come to be in that area and it's not. You know, I fell into the trap of being like, it's a PC problem, but listening to them with their IMP, it's actually not. There are a lot of different forces and a lot of
Yeah.
different people who are there, so.
Yes, and,
Agreed.
you know, and we know that, you know, sometimes there are parties on these streets that attract non-students.
Mhm.
And, you know, that really becomes an issue for public safety. You know, if we are going to sort of, I mean, in some ways, what we're proposing simply codifies what already exists. This is a student zone. And if it is a student zone, does it attract you know, people who you know, students from other schools or people who want to be in the vicinity of students who are having parties and so forth? Yes, then it becomes incumbent on the city to redouble its efforts to enforce other rules and regulations.
Okay, any other questions? We can still have some more discussion on this after public comment, but I'm kind of eager to hear from. We have two council people here. We had three, but we lost one. And including the proponent of this ordinance. So at this point, we will open the public comment portion of the agenda item. And out of deference to the position of the sponsoring council person, I would invite Shelley Peterson to the mic first, and
You're gonna
then
come
following with
up to
councilperson Jill Davidson.
Please make sure check the mic, please, Councilwoman, and speak close to it. Yes, perfect. Thank you.
As long as you speak into it, you're good.
That can be a little funny. I can't see you, but I can read my screen. That's good.
Yep.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the City Planning Commission, and members of the public. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of the proposed student housing overlay district for Ward 14. Thank you to Bob Azar and the planning department who heard my idea for an overlay district, incorporated it into the comprehensive plan, and now helped turn it into an ordinance we can all get behind. Ward 14 has become an epicenter of off-campus student housing in Providence. For years, our neighborhoods have absorbed the impacts of increased student density while trying to remain vibrant, stable communities where families, seniors, and longtime residents can continue to live and thrive. This proposal recognizes that balance is necessary. Students will continue to have the ability to live together throughout Providence, including outside of Ward 14. What this ordinance seeks to do is prevent the endless expansion of student housing into existing residential neighborhoods, pushing people out of their homes and communities. The impact of which is devastating. Families who have been here for generations uprooted, children having to leave their schools, and families no longer able to afford the place that they call home. If we care about our neighbors and our neighborhoods, something clearly needs to be done to slow down the expansion and ensuing displacement. For the past 4 years, we have invited everyone to the table. Providence College representatives, landlords, students, neighborhood organizations, city departments, and residents have all been asked to participate in finding collaborative solutions. Many have engaged thoughtfully, and this ordinance did not begin as a debate about growth. It began with neighbors simply asking for help. For many years, residents primarily wanted relief from overflowing trash, late night noise, public intoxication, parking concerns, property maintenance concerns, and the constant disruption that accompanies an increasingly dense concentration of student rentals. Had those quality of life issues been meaningfully addressed years ago, I do believe that many neighbors would have been satisfied. Instead, the challenge has grown. Over the past 2 years, we've witnessed unprecedented consolidation of student housing ownership. The largest landlord in the area acquired its closest competitor in a transaction reportedly valued at approximately $25 million. As ownership becomes increasingly concentrated, neighbors worry not only about their quality of life, but also about the affordability, the housing diversity, and the long-term character of their community. At the same time, Providence College continues to expand. As institutional properties are acquired and removed from the city's tax rolls, the financial impacts are shared by all Providence. Expansion itself is not the issue. Colleges evolve, and they should have opportunities to grow. But that growth cannot come at the expense of the neighborhoods that surround them. I also want to be clear that I do not place the blame on students. Students are making decisions based on the housing options available to them. When a single company controls much of the surrounding housing market, students themselves have limited choices. The responsibility of creating a sustainable housing strategy belongs to all of us. Institutions, landlords, the city, the community, and the community working together. It's why we've proposed several ordinances to help us regarding the impact of student housing. That is one example of such, and why we as a city through ordinance attempt to accomplish it. Cities across the country have recognized that university neighborhoods require thoughtful planning. Philadelphia has established a university and educational housing overlay district. Columbus, Ohio has implemented a university district overlay. Los Angeles has used the neighborhood stabilization overlay to protect residential communities near campuses. Stanford and Middletown, Connecticut have also adopted specialized university zoning districts to balance institutional growth with neighborhood preservation. Providence is not inventing something new. We are building on planning tools that have been successfully used elsewhere to manage growth responsibly. What you have in front of you is a product of collaborative work between my office and the planning department, which we refined together to get to where it is, taking into consideration the many competing needs and keeping neighborhood stability, quality of life at its center. This proposal creates a framework that protects neighborhoods while still allowing student housing and institutional growth. It encourages planning instead of reacting to crisis. It recognizes that community stability and higher education can coexist. Most importantly, it leaves room for collaboration. This ordinance is not the end of the conversation. It is merely the beginning for a better one. I do remain committed to working with Providence College students, landlords, neighbors, and anyone willing to come to the table with faith to continue improving this proposal and finding practical solutions. At its heart, the ordinance is about preserving neighborhoods while supporting higher education. It is about ensuring that growth happens thoughtfully, equitably, and sustainably. I respectfully ask the City Planning Commission to support this proposal, which is directly in line with the comprehensive plan, and help us create a balanced path forward for Ward 14, one that protects our community while allowing opportunity for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Davidson. And I have a sign-in sheet here. If you haven't signed in, you will still get a chance to be called up to sign in. We'll get to that at the end. And if you're joining us in our virtual room, please raise your virtual hand or press *9 if you'd like to speak on this agenda item. Councilor.
Good evening, and thank you, Chairman and CBC members, anybody listening. Really appreciate this time. I am speaking in favor of your support of this student housing overlay. And just as by way of introduction, I am Jill Davidson. I am the City Councilor for Ward 2, which is College Hill, Blackstone. This is something that I have been keeping a close eye on, that I know neighbors who may be here tonight have been keeping a close eye on, because it may be applicable to some of the areas around Brown University. That's a different problem, different set of opportunities, different scope. So I think that starting with this student housing overlay as a pilot and evaluating results is really critical to inform our decision-making about other parts of the city. Everything is unique. I do want to speak briefly, actually, to Commissioner Caldwell's question about other cities. Councilwoman Peterson mentioned some, and I've had experience actually as a college student here in Philadelphia. I wanted to briefly speak to that and I think the advantages that this kind of overlay brings. One of my children attended Temple University from 2018 to 2022. And he lived off campus for 3 years. it was incredibly helpful for the university to be able to say to students and families, here's where you go. There's a map, it was clear. I knew that my child would be under the protection of Temple University Police in that area. I knew that Temple University vans would drive there. The clarity was helpful, and I know the clarity was helpful not only to the students who were there, but of course to the neighbors around them. Slightly different arrangement in that case, and I'm going to read the name of that overlay district. The North Central Philadelphia Overlay District that actually created buffer zones that really defines the buffer zones. The student housing was a different ordinance, but the critical part was it sort of preserved everything that Councilwoman Peterson mentioned. It preserved neighborhood stability. This is not a current concern in Providence so much, but it could be in the future. It preserved the value, the housing price value in the area, which was a critical concern, especially in Philadelphia in the 2010s when this was developed. And otherwise creates clear agreement in a neighborhood where there was a lot of economic stability among residents and a rapidly growing university. Different situations, they handled it differently, and that may well happen if and when student overlay districts come to other parts of Providence. The Ward 2 student overlay district may look different, may operate somewhat differently. I think it's important to be able to preserve those distinctions and learn from this example. So again, both, had the experience, my child's college education, 3 years off campus, living in a student zone, and also looking at the character of our neighborhood, looking at some of the challenges that are happening now. I would love to be able to use this tool to be able to find the right kind of balance with Brown, with other universities. Really critical that we move forward with something like this. Otherwise, we're going to continue with unregulated student housing expansion. And that creates no incentive for the university to be thoughtful about how it is supporting its students, housing its students. I feel like limits of, some reasonable boundaries and limits are good for everybody. So again, I also want to ask for your support so we can find the right balance between everything that the university adds to our city, which is quite a bit. The students who come to our city, and I actually was one of them. I'm not a Providence native. I came here because I went to Brown. I fell in love with Providence and feel very, very lucky to be here. We want to welcome students. We want them to feel happy here. And I actually think this is a tool that can move that forward rather than limiting that. So speaking in favor, I also wanted to know that Councilman Gonzalez was here and had to leave for his community meeting, so he's done such a he asked me to add that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving along, we will take Councilman Gonzalez off the list. So we're going to move to the general public comment on this item now. We will be imposing a time restriction, as we often do when there's a lot of public interest. We will, since there doesn't seem to be a huge amount of people, we'll do instead of 2 minutes, we'll do 4 minutes to allow a little bit more dialogue. So please make sure you have your comments ready to meet in that 4-minute time frame. Also, if you've submitted anything prior to the meeting, we have a handful of letters. Those are already a part of the record, and the commissioners all have those and have read them. So we'd appreciate you not just reading from whatever you submit, but to comment on in broad strokes what you say in your letter, or add something new to the conversation. So with that, again, if you're joining us in the virtual world, get ready by raising your virtual hand, or press *9 if you're calling in. And if you're here in the room, when we get to the end of this sign-in sheet, I will ask for anyone else who wishes to speak on this who's here in the physical room, and we'll have you join us at the podium. So the first person who I believe also did send in a letter is Shannon Russell. I appreciate that, Shoyan. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Hey, please just state your name for the record. Yeah, speak, you have to hold close to your mouth and speak into it.
My name is Shannon Russell and I'm from the 02908 Club. The majority of the houses that we're talking about here are owned by my company and I. We've been here for nearly 25 years. If anybody's familiar with the area from 25 years ago, you'll notice there's been a significant amount of improvement there. And yes, there has been expansion and increase in students at the school, and they need a place to live. Nobody can debate that they need a place to live. They cannot fit anymore on campus, and they need to be able to have not just a place to live, but a safe place to live. To expect that they're going to be pushed into a commercial zone that is clear across and farther away from their campus so that they cannot easily walk to their school as they're able to do right now, is just, it's not acceptable. Parents send their children here for a reason. And they know the history of the company, they know the history of the area, and they want their students, sons and daughters, to be able to be in close proximity to their school, to be able to be around them. And if you are familiar with the area, you'll know that the majority of non-students who were, I shouldn't say it that way, but as a result of the houses that went up for sale when we started up here almost 25 years ago, we were given opportunities to buy houses that had drug dealers in them, violent offenders, sex offenders, human trafficking, in at least one of the houses that we bought. And we took an area and made it very safe and affordable for the college students, regardless of what anybody else says about what a landlord charges for their rent. That is, they're not just paying for a room in a house, they're paying for a standard of living, they're paying for close proximity to their school, and again, a safe area. Our company works very closely with the Providence Police, with the Providence College, Johnson and Wales, and collectively PC, Johnson and Wales, and 02908 pay over $400,000 every year to have detailed officers out on duty between Thursday and Sunday during the active hours of the students. I'm not going to speak for the police department, but I can tell you from the close contact and relations that all of our companies have had together, that if they were here, they would tell you that the crime rate in that area has gone down significantly. The values of homes have gone up significantly. The beauty of that area has improved significantly. The families that have chosen to sell their houses, I can tell you, and again, I've been here since before day one. And I can tell you that we've never knocked on a door and said, hey, we're gonna offer you double, triple the value of your home because we want to have you buy your house and to turn it into college student rentals. We've never needed to do that because when we came up here, we were coming and we were seeing houses for sale. And we saw an opportunity to create for our children and other children a safe place to live. Houses that were falling apart, that were abandoned by the homeowners who no longer could afford to keep up their houses, who wanted to retire down Florida. There's a lot of families that have left, not because they were offered money by another landlord, it wasn't us, but not because they were offered money from another landlord to chase them out. They sold their houses because they got older, some of them. They wanted to go down to Florida, they wanted to go to South Carolina. They didn't have the money anymore, whatever the case may be. When we had opportunities that were presented to us by the homeowners, by the banks, by neighbors who specifically came to us and asked us to buy their neighboring property because it was being occupied by squatters. And when we did buy it, it was filled with human feces and blood all over the place because it had been neglected for so many years. When a woman died on Lead Street, her niece came to us and asked us to buy the land because she was not able to sell it because it was filled with ledge and they needed to do something. And our company paid over $2 million to buy that land, develop that land, put college students in it, and then we were gonna build a wall. And we asked to have that across the street turned into R1 zoning, and it was refused by the councilwoman who's proposing this ordinance.
Okay, that was your performance. Thank you very much. No, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
The next person up is Sam Levy. And then just to be ready, Marissa Brown, you're on deck.
That's really spring.
My name is Sam Levy.
Live
Live in Providence, not in the area, not in this particular area, although I have friends that do. And I'm a landlord, and I have some feelings about some of this. First of all, I think it's discriminatory redlining, which as far as I'm concerned is illegal. If you're gonna call it a student zone, what's the next zone? Black, Hispanic, Jewish, what's your next zone? The next thing is, if students should be able to live any place they want, period. With no discrimination at all. But everything is location. Most everybody here wants to live as close as they can to their job, their school, and their relatives. So why shouldn't a student be? You want to be able to walk there. If you're a student, you should be able to walk to school instead of having to go buy a car and register it, insure it, and all that other stuff. If there's a problem with anything code enforcement wise, pick up the phone. That's all there is to that. As far as, I live in a two-family house, that's owner occupied. So my taxes are at that particular rate. Somebody else next door to me lives in a single-family house that's owner occupied. They have a different tax rate. Somebody else that has a, I'm assuming it, making an assumption. That student housing that's, 2, 3, 4 family house, whatever it happens to be, is at a different tax rate. So they're paying an exorbitant amount of taxes. They're supposed to cover police, fire, rescue, all this stuff. They're already paying for it. But I hear that they have to pay for details. To me, that's illegal. I mean, they're already paying for it in taxes. So why is the city double dipping? To charge somebody for a detail it's already paid for in the taxes. I mean, maybe I'm dumb, but
PC doesn't pay taxes.
This high density, I'll give you a perfect example. I had a house I still own. When I bought it, it was supposed to be a 3-family house. Told me it was a 2. Went to zoning. They said they get it rezoned for a 3 because it'd be grandfathered in from 1910 something. One of my neighbors complained about it. I said, it's real simple. You don't want to have 3 families there and it's controlled by so many people per room by square footage. Not a problem. So I'll just make the 2nd and 3rd floor townhouse effect. And I already have somebody, and my son was friends with a family. There's 8 kids in the family. You want to be limited to like 2 kids per apartment. It makes 4 kids for those 2 apartments. What do you want 8 kids in the family? Because you can't tell mommy and daddy, throw the kids away. So if I was buying in this area, if somebody told me I can't rent to more than a certain number of people, I would go to section 8 and say I want families, minimum 8 kids.
Okay.
And that gets around this, but what kind of students? I used to own a house on Referral Avenue. One of my tenants was a doctor. He was a student that was at Roger Williams Hospital. So if there was a bunch of doctors
4
there,
minutes.
That's your
complaints.
Thank you, sir. Next up is Marissa Brown, and on deck is Dexter Strong, who we did receive a letter from prior to this meeting.
I'm Marissa Brown.
Executive Director of Providence Preservation Society, and I live on William Street in Fox Point. I have a few things to add new to the conversation because the chair asked us to be brief. I just wanted to say that Councilor Peterson did such an amazing job, I think, of explaining the context for the work and taking us back to what's been years and years of collaboration between her, community members, and the planning department. And so I am here to say that we strongly support this zoning ordinance amendment. And just to kind of pull back a little bit and give the committee members some information. You know, what's happening at PC is happening across the country. There's been a rapid change in ownership that has of housing that has really impacted the housing prices. Between 2017 and 2022, a study from Harvard found that the number of single-family homes owned by investors nearly doubled. There's been similar kind of numbers if you look at rental properties, and the findings are that investors have the potential to exacerbate already extremely limited inventory of homes for sale, especially entry-level homes for first-time and moderate income buyers. So I'm excited to see this work happening in Providence. I think it's really important in this specific neighborhood. I think it's great to see that already there's a conversation about applications in other neighborhoods. And I'm excited about Providence being part of creating models for other cities that are struggling with this exact same problem. So just to give also a little more context for what is happening in neighborhoods around PC, in 2025, PPS did a study that showed that there were close to 260 parcels of land in the vicinity of PC owned by a handful of landlords and investors. And the vast majority are really owned by two companies, the 02908 Club, we just heard from, and Amicus Properties and Strive. Block-long stretches of many streets, including Eaton Street, Pinehurst Avenue, and others, are entirely or almost entirely owned by investors. You know, these are streets, and this is a neighborhood that for a long time has been that really hard to find entry level home neighborhood. So it has been a huge impact on this neighborhood to have that loss of homes as student housing has taken over more and more. All to say, we strongly support the amendment. I had a couple of questions. I know I can't ask questions, but I think that one thing that I'm wondering about, having seen some of the early draft ordinance language, which relates to this question of review, which came up earlier in enforcement, because I know in one version, I think there was a college student residential overlay committee, which seemed to be a review body. So I'm just wondering about why that had dropped out. And I'm wondering about what the review process might be, or a little more information about enforcement might be helpful. But all to say, we strongly support it, and I really appreciate the work that has taken years and years for many people who are in this room today.
Thank you. The next person on the list is Dexter Strong, and then if there are any others here in the room who didn't make the sign-up sheet but would like to speak on this agenda item, if you wouldn't mind standing by this podium over here, or sitting down by the podium so that we're ready to call you up when Mr. Strong is finished. Go right ahead.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak tonight. I just would like to say we do have this problem in College Hill. It's not just PC. And it's a very difficult problem to understand if you haven't experienced it firsthand. And I want to commend you, Bob, for going to PC and actually spending the time there and observing what is going on, what is really going on, because I live in a neighborhood where this is happening too. And again, it's very different if you have students next door and you're woken up at night and there's garbage in the street and there's beer pong being played every warm day in the spring. It's very disturbing. And in my area of College Hill, we've had 6 single-family houses converted within the last several years to student housing with 10 to 12 students. So we strongly support more strict density limits in the R1 residential neighborhoods where we live, which is a benefit of this proposal. And we also strongly support really this very deliberate and thoughtful approach to managing the growth of student housing. The universities are going to continue to expand. They're never going to require all the students to live on campus, never going to happen. This is reality. But let's have a thoughtful, planful, structured approach to where we want student. What settings are the most successful? I agree. I think the large purpose-built apartments in commercial zones, you don't see a lot of problems. That works well. So let's have a thoughtful approach to where we want the student housing to go, because it's going to happen. And, you know, those of you who haven't experienced it, I urge you to, you know, come over to College Hill, you know, on a Saturday, a warm Saturday afternoon in the fall or the spring, and you'll see. We don't have the festivals, but we have backyard parties of a variety of sizes. And really in the R1 districts, all the houses have backyards, and that's what the students love. They love to have those outdoor backyard parties, and they're very disturbing. So I'll just finish by saying, you know, zoning isn't the only answer. There's tenant education. The students are not prepared to live in an adult neighborhood. They don't know about the ordinances. They don't know about garbage pickup. They don't know about parking. So tenant education is definitely an issue as well. And enforcement. You know, there needs to be more enforcement of the existing ordinances. But this is a great proposal that will provide a well thought out plan, you know, for managing the future expectation. But I would imagine people who live on the border of these zones, in residential zones, are going to be concerned. Because like you were saying, it's a magnet, you know, it's going to draw students, it's going to be more out of control. We need enforcement within the zone, the noise ordinance and the density limits. So this is a great proposal, but this alone will not fix the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Conley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I wasn't planning on speaking, but Bob made a couple comments that I thought were really interesting and very, very valuable to this discussion. The space in between, I don't know if you have the ability to pull up the GIS. Dylan Conley. Just speaking on behalf of Dylan Conley this evening. I have the GIS map.
That is probably the first and last time that we will hear that from Dylan Conley at any of these meetings. We like hearing from Dylan Conley as Dylan Conley.
As me, myself, and I, what happens when you have any sort of restriction of existing demand, you're focusing that demand into a smaller area. So I think it's a good idea to think of it like steam, like a pressure, right? So if that demand gets focused in a more concentrated area, you're going to see really intense, really rapid change in a very small space. But what Bob had identified is PC, unlike other schools in the city, doesn't have a sort of Dare Street, Oak Street, Wickenden, like a commercial corridor to complement these. Admiral, in between River and Douglas on the immediate north side of the campus, is not commercial. It's got commercial nodes at the River and Douglas intersections. And so I'm going to jump up real quick and take the mic and take the mic. This is cool. And so this space here is allows you to, if it was C2, would allow you to design the exact sorts of building that the gentleman most recently identified as not causing the problems that he experiences in his neighborhood, because they're purpose built for student housing. And so you can architecturally solve for the nuisances that normally accommodate that use. So I think to the extent that this board is considering the area in a holistic manner, in between those two commercial nodes on the north side of campus was a way to release that pressure of demand without invading the R1 zones. Basically pulls all the demand away from the R1 zones and releases the pressure into a space with newly built buildings specifically for that, so you don't have those nuisances. So I think it sort of solves a lot of the issues that are voiced from the planning. Want to echo that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dylan Conley as Dylan Conley. Is there anyone else in the physical room who wishes to speak on this agenda item before we turn it over to the virtual room? Okay, and if you're joining us in the virtual room, remember to press *9 if you're calling in, or raise your hand in the bottom middle section of your screen.
Okay, online we have Kaylin Bencombe. I think you pronounce it that way. Kaylin, go
Hello.
ahead.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Kaylin Ben Cosme. My family has lived on Radcliffe Avenue for about 23 years now, so I've been able to have the purview of seeing the street go through various different iterations from when there were more students, and for lack of a better term, it was kind of a party everywhere, so to speak. And I was concerned for the safety of my parents' vehicles, our house. And I'm worried that with the overlay district, it is going to turn into this again because although my parents now have a small business where we do rent out to students and professionals, we have strict rules and we're worried that that won't be the same everywhere on this street. So I want to echo what someone mentioned earlier about how this will be managed and enforced in a way that doesn't push out the owners of the houses out. Uh, that was just my 2 cents. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We appreciate you chiming in. I'm not seeing anyone else in the virtual room who has their hand raised. And we'll go again one more time in the physical room to see if there's anyone else. And seeing none, we will close the public comment portion of this agenda item. I think there was some thoughtful dialogue there. I don't know, Bob, if you wanted to answer the questions that were posed.
Yes, and then maybe I can sum up with the staff report as well.
Yeah.
So there were a couple of questions from Marissa Brown. The idea of a committee, there was a suggestion that there would be some sort of development plan review, that there would be a review process for the new developments. There's state law is pretty strict about what you can use development plan review for, or what there could be a special review process for. And this is not the kind of thing that would fit into that structure. And honestly, the issue is not so much what the building looks like or whether it conforms to zoning. We have internal processes that can ensure that they comply, or if they need variances or waivers, they're going to come in front of the City Plan Commission, or perhaps the zoning board for smaller projects. So it didn't seem as if a review process for a new building was going to be helpful in any way. And again, you know, she asked about enforcement. I think I spoke to that we are going to expect the handful of landlords to abide by this if it goes into effect, and that there's always the possibility of people who are aggrieved filing complaints with us, and of course enforcement of other quality of life regulations would happen through the police. In terms of the staff report, we simply lay out the same kind of argument that I was making during the presentation, but I just wanted to speak quickly to our recommended findings. As I mentioned, this regulation comes right out of LU 3 Section G of the Providence Comprehensive Plan. It speaks about further regulating uses incompatible with stable neighborhoods, including high-density student housing and short-term rentals. Further, it conforms to Objective LU 11D, which aims to strengthen regulation of short-term rentals and student housing to promote long-term housing. You also need to make findings about consistency with the purposes of zoning, and we suggest that you find that it's consistent with Section 101A, which calls for promoting the public safety, health, and general welfare. B, providing for a range of uses and intensities of use appropriate to the character of the city and reflecting current and expected future needs. And C, providing for orderly growth and development, which recognizes the goals and patterns of land use contained in the comp plan and the use of innovative development regulations and techniques. I will add that this staff report was written by our mayoral fellow, Julian Gross, who's sitting in the back there next to Blake. Julian has been a tremendous addition to our staff for just the past couple of months. He's only going to be here for another couple of weeks, unfortunately, before he moves along. And so I just want to recognize his efforts towards this. So just summing up, our recommendation is that you advise the city council to approve the proposed amendment.
Well, commissioners? Yes.
The public comment was great, thank you. I love it, you know, when people speak up. I did want to just thinking about the correlation versus causation thing about houses, because I do remember what the area looked like, but I would say, having bought my own house in 1998 on Westminster Street, looks very much the same. I mean, and I think the whole city has gotten a real makeover, facelift in the last 25 years. So I mean, I appreciate the efforts of anyone who goes in and purchases and restores, fixes up, or otherwise renovates a home to housing units, you know, to improve the city. But also, I do think that that probably would have, we don't know if that was the reason why, if anyone else had gone in and bought houses and lived in them, if that wouldn't have also cleaned up the neighborhood. Because again, I bought my house off of Westminster Street almost 30 years ago and it looked very similar. And now, you know, we don't have big institutional anything, but it did get cleaned up. And I can think of a lot of areas in the city that have followed that same trajectory. So I did want to point that out, that it's a correlation thing, not necessarily a causation thing.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's been very clear that this isn't intended to be anti-landlord. It's intended to be anti-expansion of this use, to disrupt the neighborhood more impactfully than it already has. And it has impacted this neighborhood significantly, more so than I can see. Like if you look at the past, 10 years, I can't think of another area in Providence that has changed as dramatically over the past 10 years. Like this is very significant over a swath of area and streets. So I think having some guardrails and some regulations is appropriate. And in my opinion, is that this is a good way to start as a pilot to see if it works, see if it would work in other areas. I do also agree that other areas have their own unique issues, and it may need to be tailored to different areas differently. But I think it's a good first step.
I don't want to stop on the topic. I've actually spoken to Shelley a few times about, I'm a realtor. I'm very familiar with this area. I actually bought my first house in 2004 on Durham Street, right behind Bradley's Cafe. And the neighborhood's very different. I lived there as a single female by myself and wasn't necessarily the safest place to live. And I do agree that it's a safer place now. When we compare this to maybe Temple University or cities that implemented this in 2010, I wish we had implemented something like this in 2010. My kids go to LaSalle Academy. I drive down Main Street 10 times a day, 12 times if they forget something, which is often because I'm the mom that says, okay, and I bring it. I think that the parties that Bob speaks of, this corridor of Eaton Street, I don't think that this is going to change at all. Based on us passing this, these homes are what they are. They are student housing. It is unique to Providence College in its makeup, which we've discussed. I am not, I think it's a slippery slope if we start to, take this as a, let's see how this works and apply it to College Hill or to the east side, and I say that as a resident of the east side and, as a realtor, and I think that we all acknowledge that there are two big companies that own a lot of the homes near PC, and I don't know if this is gonna change their life financially, because they're going to be grandfathered in just by the fact that they are in this red zone that we're allowing to have 15 students, and I don't know if any of the homes have 15 students, or more, so it's probably not changing things for them. I do know firsthand that there are, homeowners in the abutting area that think the value of their house has to do with the fact that someone would come in and pay good money for it, maybe in 0908. And now they may not pay as much money for it. So while this may be making some homeowners in the neighborhood happy because they are restricting the growth of student housing, it is going to have an impact on the value of their homes. And again, I don't want to keep saying I'm a realtor, but I have a listing in Elmhurst right now that was put on the market this weekend, and there was an overwhelming number of people who came, and it's still a very family friendly, desirable neighborhood as evidenced. I mean, personally, and then by the people who came, there was no one there looking to turn my house on Wilson Street into student housing. Is the house as valuable if the neighborhood is restricted? I don't know the answer to that, but I can't say it's not something that I am not concerned with. The houses on Venice that have not been sold, the houses in the abutting areas, I think they're thinking of someone coming in and developing them, and with this ordinance, that's probably not going to happen. And maybe it's only impacting a handful of people, but I think it's something to be said. I personally start to just have concern with the city telling people who's allowed to live in their house. As a college student who lives in Boston, I had to live with 6 people because I couldn't afford to live there otherwise. I don't know how many PC students need to live with a number of students to make the rent, to meet rent. But I am not, I think that's something that we haven't discussed or considered really heavily to factor. So I have a ton of admiration and respect for Shelley, and I don't mean to go against what I clearly worked really hard on. I am just hesitant to I'm hesitant to approve this personally because I think there are far-reaching effects that we don't have a grasp of in this moment.
That's a good perspective. And absolutely fair. We won't be approving it, by the way. We'll be sending it on to city council for them to review and take up. Noel, Dave, any further comment, any discussion, deliberation?
Just the thought of adding regulation or not adding regulation. And something that you said, it's that we're not against investors. I think this was really more pushing for homeowners to be able to buy and keep their property. I'm not particularly fond of new regulation. There's more regulation, but I think in this case it might be pushing what we've heard about PC here. It doesn't always seem to come across as a positive hearing. And it would be a way to favor the homeowner and to buy and keep their property. Thought of a regulation, added regulation.
Anything, Dave, for you to add or chime in?
Sure, my daughter graduated from Temple in May. So I remember going to Eden Street some decades ago as a much younger man. And I can tell you some stories about that time. Well, that would probably be a little more. Now, maybe we'll just stop there. Perhaps Bob's stories. But that being said, I've seen some other student ordinances like the town of Narragansett Providence is doing the opposite of Narragansett, so they're doing much better. Yeah. In general, I think it's a light touch. I think it's a very thoughtful approach. I think it's a very collaborative approach. I am familiar with the neighborhood. I've been for a long time. That there is a challenge over there to the greater city of Providence right now that does require some manner of attention. No, I don't have any problem with that. This is entirely different than College Hill, so I just want to be sure that we're not commingling the medicine here, if you will. That's an entirely different circumstance over there. But for Providence College, for managing this a little bit better, and I still think landlords, institutional investors have an opportunity to make a lot of money over there under this ordinance, perhaps even more. That might even result in more community amenities, greater density, the things that we have. So I favor it as a light touch.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't know how this is all gonna shake out. I don't think, like Lindsay's mentioned, that this is gonna all of a sudden pull back into those little overlays, but it may prevent the creep that has continued. And you're right, there are single families that are looking for housing in this area, but there are also institutional investors who are buying up the single family housing or pushing the single family occupants out. And I do agree. I think, you know, Dave, you mentioned it. What you said is absolutely accurate. It's a light touch. It's not, I don't think it's overly burdensome. It's probably as light as anything that I've seen for student housing in a long time.
The only other thought was, on the buildings. Thought on expanding this commercial zone on Admiral Street, thought about that. It does seem, well, if you're on PC, you go up to Bakery there, and there's that little corner. But I don't know, well, my thought was, there's a way to recommend consideration.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, the council person from that ward is here and, you know, I'm sure that, what they've heard the discussion and that would be something that they would take up as well. I think, I don't think it's a bad idea. Adding
Long-term kind of.
right, but that's, I think we could deal with that separately if the council person comes back and wants to discuss that, but kudos to Attorney Conley for speaking as himself and mentioning that because it's not a bad idea. I guess at this point there's no more discussion. We'd be looking for a motion of some sort to move this along.
I'll make a motion
Okay.
to move this on.
The motion would be based on the findings in the staff report and the discussion that ensued between us and the planning staff.
Yes, that's case number 3619. Student housing ordinance amendment. I make a motion to pass back to the city council. What's that be?
Recommend approval.
Recommend approval.
Based on the findings in the staff report and the discussion.
Based on the findings of in the discussion.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
We'll second the positive recommendation.
Okay, go around and do a vote, Lindsay.
Nay.
You can say that. Yes.
Aye.
Dave, Sid,
Aye.
and I vote aye. Best of luck at city council. We've been at it for a little while. I think I'm gonna take a 5-minute restroom break before we head into the next agenda item. So we'll come back here at 6:30. It was 6:24.
I just need to get,
Ready, Noel?
I just need to get the owl.
Yeah,
back.
it's back on the community. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I think the community had mixed feelings, so. Yeah. Let's make that. That's great. Yeah. No, you had fun. Okay. Sounds great.
All right, everyone ready?
All right.
We have 4 seating. As long as we have 4 seating, we're good.
Yeah.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right, we will call this meeting back to order. It is 6:33 PM. And we will continue on with the next agenda item, which is another city council referral for referral number 3620, Billboard regulation. The petitioner is Dylan Conley as the petitioner, not as him without them.
Okay. I'll do a quick introduction here. This, I don't know if any of you were here when something similar came before you last time. It was several years ago.
I think I'm the only one. You might have been here.
Yeah. So, take 2. And this is similar to the last proposal where, this concept is that, there are owners of, well, let me start by saying this. Billboard is defined in the zoning ordinance as a type of sign where it's advertising goods or services that are not available on the site where the sign is. Okay, so we sometimes we call it off-premises advertising. It's not just the size of the sign or who it's oriented towards. It's what it's advertising. You could have a big sign on top of a building advertising something available in that building, and that's not a billboard, even though it might be the same size as a billboard, and it might be oriented towards an interstate highway. But off-premise advertising is what we're talking about. This is not allowed in the city of Providence, but there are dozens, if not hundreds, of non-conforming, legally established billboards in the city. There are owners of these signs who jealously hold on to their grandfathered rights, because if they take down the structure of the sign, they can never put it back up again. And it appears that more recently, owners of these billboards would rather convert them to digital sign faces than keep them as in their current configuration, which is static, where the message has to be applied by human beings to these large sign faces. If these are big TV screens, the messages can be changed with the click of a mouse. And also those messages can change over time, so that perhaps somebody looking at the sign might see more than one message in the time that they're passing by the sign. So this particular petition says a couple of things. First, it says that an owner of a billboard can replace a static sign with a digital sign. And in exchange for this replacement, the owner, presumably owning other signs throughout the city, would take down twice the square footage of the sign that's being converted. And then there is another provision here that says that as a condition of getting a building permit for a digital sign, the operator must execute an agreement for a mitigation fee with the city, payable annually for the duration of the use of the sign, or 20 years, whichever is less. So we have considered this, and we've reviewed our the past debate about this. We've reviewed state law regarding billboards. And we have essentially proposed our own regulation that has some stricter controls that you'll see it in the staff report in the recommendation section. The centerpiece of our regulation, the major difference here is that we are saying that the removal of billboards has to be the equivalent of 10 times the area of the sign face that's proposed to be made into a digital billboard. So instead of 2 times, we're proposing 10 times. We have some other regulations about complying with federal and state regulations. It would need a permit. There are rules about, we would prohibit them, we would restrict them to commercial or industrial districts and prohibit them within 250 feet of a residential district. We would mandate that the sign face be oriented towards Interstate 95. The original petition says that they need to be oriented towards interstate highways. We only have 2 in Providence, 95 and 195. As far as we can tell, there are no billboards facing 195. There used to be, where I-195 used to be in its previous location. All those billboards are facing something other than an interstate highway. And because billboards were prohibited when I-195 was moved, you don't have billboards on I-195, at least in the area of the relocated highway. So you can see the other rules that we put in here, and I'm sure that the petitioner would have something to say about these. So I think I'm going to stop talking and turn it over to Attorney Conley.
So I think maybe the simplest way to organize it is the response to the planning report, and then I can zoom out or zoom in any manner to help with the board. I think we are agreeable to all of the conditions, save the 10 times, and I've walked through that in detail. And there's 2 other conditions. One, I think, I'm just trying to make sure I understand, that another where the time frame, we'd be asking for a little bit of flexibility. But so on the staff report, there's a list of recommendations 1 through 7, and 6 has A, B, and C. So I'm going to start running through from the top here.
Just make sure to talk right up.
Top right, sorry.
There you go.
So when we say a permit is required, is this permit distinct from a building permit or the electronic sign permit we get from the state? It's just a building permit, right?
A permit would be a City of Providence building permit.
Okay, great. 100% in agreement with that. So we're in agreement with number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, 6. B, well, we're in complete agreement with 6C and 7. 6B, the removal and abandonment prior to installation of the electronic message sign. We were hoping that condition could actually be the removal of all advertisement prior to, and then the removal of the structure within 90 days. The difference is some of these older signs, you don't know what's in the ground. So you start to go to do the removal and it's a problem and you need to call in specialists, and it can take a while. We're very happy to take down all of the advertising. We would just ask that once we start to take that down, if we discover there's an issue, we would have like a 90-day period to take down the structure. The 10 times the square footage. So kind of going back to our original submission, we were fortunate enough to earn a favorable recommendation from the CPC. This is the original submission back in 2019. And that was a 2 times the sign face proposals, that's why we submitted 2 times the sign phase again. We wanted to go beyond that with the mitigation fee. We disagree with the city's position that you can't do it, but it's okay. If we should be struck, it could be struck. We have no objection. The mitigation fee being struck. The difference between the 2 times and the 10 times is quite significant. So we did a full review and analysis of all signs within the city. There are approximately 149 signs in the city spread out across maybe 100 locations, maybe fewer locations than that. We count signs by their faces. So if you have a billboard with 2 faces, that's sort of 2 signs, 1 location. So that's where the numbers can be a little bit confusing. In our original proposal, we did a very detailed review and actually identified specific signs as part of the removal. And the goal from planning staff at that time, and to a large extent, council members at that time, was the removal of neighborhood signs. The neighborhood signs are smaller signs. So a quick breakdown of the general size of the signs, the number of them in the city. So you have your classic sort of highway billboards, those are the large ones. Those are 672 square feet. Those are the one, that's the billboard that we would term digital, 672 square feet. So 10X is 6,720 square feet to take down. Remaining in the city are in sort of the neighborhood scale signs. There are 95 posters and 8 junior posters. Junior posters are only 55 square feet. So if we take all those down, we're only removing 440 square feet of signage. So the remaining number of signs to be removed of the poster size is posters, there's 95 of them. They're 236 square feet apiece. So I'd have to take down 27 posters. So that's more than 25% of all posters and almost 30% of all neighborhood signs in the city. So that square footage is very onerous to the point of potentially impossible. The reason why it would be impossible is these signs are usually, not always, but usually subject to a lease. And so you don't necessarily have the ability to remove it unilaterally. You can remove it based on the conditions of the lease. So to remove 35 out of the 103 neighborhood signs is a very significant number. And it's also a very, very significant challenge in terms of identifying the number of leases prior to taking. I saw in the report that there were other jurisdictions that had as much as a 14-to-1 exchange. I didn't know if we could find out which jurisdictions that was. My point being, on that front, if you get into other areas of the country, the size of the municipality is usually much larger. Providence is a very small city by city standards. And so the total number of signs that need to be taken down and other locations by 14-to-1 might not be such a high percentage of total signs on the municipality. So we think that the 10X is generally too much to the point of impossible. I don't know that we would even pursue the application. But we'd be happy to work with the city on a ratio above 2X, but 10X is probably impossible, I think.
Yeah, one question before, if Bob wants to chime in. You talk about the posters. How many large signs do you have? We're not talking about those. You still have a lot.
So
You
there's
still have a lot of signs that, so it's not possible. You just don't want to take down the large signs, is that?
based on the travel of the entire discussion, preference was to take down there. So
I'm sure that's a start. Like if you can get to that number by taking down large signs also.
yes, we could.
So how many of those large signs would,
About 40.
of 179?
Yes. It was our
149.
understanding that that was
140.
neither the preference of the city nor us.
Believe it.
I don't, every time I've talked to the city about billboards, if they go away, they're happy that they go away.
It was my understanding that the preference on which billboards to go away were the smaller.
First,
cities,
yeah,
residential
that's the
neighborhoods.
low hanging fruit, right?
Yes. Yes.
I've never heard the city say, well, no, that's fine, keep that billboard.
No,
great.
no. Prioritization.
Exactly, I understood, all right, just wanted some clarification there, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, a couple things. I do want to say here that when this came up last time, Mr. Conley was representing Lamar. He hasn't said that. I just want to clarify that.
Yes.
Okay. So when he talks about the number of signs, he's talking about signs that are owned by Lamar. They may not own every billboard in the city, but they own the overwhelming majority of billboards in the city.
99%.
Okay, 99%. When we talk about our preference, my recollection of the discussion back then was that there are some pieces of property whose only use is to house a billboard, and in some cases, those properties are lots that could be developed for housing. We certainly would prefer that those billboards go away and the property be turned into housing, especially if it's residentially zoned, or even if it's commercially zoned. We never think that the highest, but I mean, maybe from a financial standpoint, the highest and best use is a billboard, but we think that there's always a better use than a billboard. We certainly, I don't think that I think I'd just as soon see a highway billboard, a large billboard removed than a small billboard. I'm not, doesn't matter so much. I mean, I think at the end of the day, what this comes down to is how much these billboards are valuable to Lamar. I mean, a 55 square foot junior poster is not going to be seen by a lot of eyeballs, and some of these posters that were once oriented towards I-195 that nobody can see anymore, I'm sure they would be perfectly happy to take those down in exchange for getting to the digital building. In terms of other cities, we weren't looking in Rhode Island, we were looking in states like Florida, where we did see the upwards of 10x removal in some of their ordinances. And by the way, perhaps council can speak to the mitigation payment if there were any questions about that. Megan, did you want to chime in on that?
Yes, gladly. Legal had a number of concerns with the originally proposed ordinance, one of which was the mitigation fee. In my humble opinion, it's not a legitimate type of fee under the State Zoning Enabling Act. Because the fee isn't set and it sort of asks the billboard owner and the city to sort of negotiate in a back room outside of a public process. It felt a lot like selling zoning approval, and it felt very arbitrary and capricious. The originally proposed billboard ordinance tried to sweeten the two-time deal with the mitigation fee. Without the mitigation fee, the 2 times doesn't, it is still sort of lacking any incentive, I think, for the city to agree to proliferate the city with digital billboards in lieu of static billboards. So I'm very concerned about the mitigation fee. That's one of the reasons I think the DPD tried to rewrite an ordinance that would be something more likely to be authorized by the Zoning Enabling Act, but without sort of that positive incentive to the city of a compensatory payment. That's another reason for the increased removal ratio, which you know, in the time since 2019, there's been a lot of cities that have adopted similar ordinances. I don't think Providence knew how much removal these companies were willing to agree to in order to get a much more valuable digital sign. And in the 7 or 8 years since, we see that increased ratios have been adopted almost everywhere else. Providence would be sort of be on an island, honestly. It was such a low ratio compared to what's been happening around the country. So I think it's more akin to the development of the planning practice and much more restrictive. And I think the more restrictive, actually, the more supportive of the ordinance being valid.
Thank you. One point, Bob, you didn't mention anything about the proposal for the we're talking about the 10 times.
Oh,
Oh yeah. The part B where there was a proposal to have a 90-day period to remove the structure. What would you, well, I think there should be some teeth in it though, so like because you don't want that to grandfather in, so the removal and abandonment of the advertisement must occur prior to the installation of the electronic message sign, and within 90 days, all structures and footings must be dismantled as well. But I think if they do that, I think you need to have, like, if this fails to happen for any reason, the permit for the electronic sign that was issued becomes null and void and they have to remove the electronic sign.
I would not be in favor of that. This is, you know, once something is built, it's extremely difficult for us to make it go away. Developers do this. They you know, come to the zoning board, they throw themselves at the mercy of the board and they say, oh, I'm sorry, it'll never happen again. But the damage has been done. So I don't see any reason. I mean, there might be a lag time between when one advertisement comes down and another one goes up. And I think so be it. If they want an electronic message sign badly enough, they can you know, maybe do a little research into the structure before they apply for the digital permit.
Yeah, okay.
And why, you know, you can just, well, I don't find the argument compelling.
I've dealt with a lot of old structure like.
If I may, so my assumption would be that in order for us to turn the sign on, we would need, I think it's still called a certificate of occupancy, they're almost called to do housing. We just state prior to certificate of occupancy.
Certificate of completion.
Certificate of completion, thank you.
I don't know, I the way this reads, I would say that. Yeah, I mean, maybe that, I don't know, that's up to your interpretation on how this reads. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
a permit is required that you have to do this calculation beforehand, so I think you'd need that calculation in order for the permit to be issued. And for it to be issued, you'd have to remove that.
well, okay, so this is what we say here is the removal and abandonment must occur prior to the installation of the sign. So you could have the permit in hand, but before you install the electronic message sign, we're saying you'd have to remove and abandon the sign, the sign in the structure. Mr. Conley is saying essentially prior to the installation of the electronic message sign, the advertisement has to be removed prior to the installation, and the structure has to be removed prior to the turning on of the sign itself. So presumably it would be a blank.
How do you do that? That you put a stop work notice on the permit? Like, they have the permit, they can build it legally.
Yeah.
So I don't feel like there's any clawback there. If you get the permit, I think this has to happen before the permit's issued.
I think
otherwise they put it up.
Yeah, I think this is
They have the
silly.
legal right to put it up.
I think this is a silly argument. I think they should just abandon the sign and take out the foundation. This is Lamar.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, I'm not super familiar with billboards, but you know, we see people with demo buildings, what could be, where's an example of something that would be a hindrance to take down a post?
So they become unsafe. And the reason why they're unsafe is there's problems with base structure on inherited signs. You go to start. So the process for moving slows down. In coordination with that, you have the installation of the electronic sign. That's specialized equipment and specialized crews that come in. The last project I worked on, we were trying to time a steel transfer from Toronto building permit versus an expiration time period. It actually just gets messy. And it gets complicated. We are not trying to create a scenario where the city doesn't have control over whether or not the electronic message sign is running, whether or not the sign is coming down. We're trying to head off a potential headache where something unexpectedly goes wrong. And things unexpectedly go wrong because it's unknown to us what the support structure is for some of their signage. And it's complicated relative to the installation process of the electronic message signs. So those are the two factors we're trying to manage. And I don't mean we're making it unnecessarily complicated, and I don't mean to be making it sort of any opportunity for my client to be able to have and sign without removal being complete. We have no desire to do anything like that. I am trying to head off a potential issue based on past experience.
I don't know the proximity of the new signs to the old signs, but I would imagine if you were spending the money on the electricity and the complication of putting a new sign up, and it's as unstable as it may be to take one down, it would probably behoove you to take it down before spending the money putting a new sign up. It seems like you would want to take it down first and wouldn't be making the argument to take it down later because you could damage what you just installed.
Absolutely. The electronic message sign that would go in, that square footage doesn't count. So all of the removed signs are separate from where the electronic sign is going.
I mean, I feel like we're spending a lot of
Yeah,
time on a silly issue. Like you can get cranes, you can torch the base and then remove the foundation with a hammer. Like there's a lot of things you can do. I'm in the building industry. I've dealt with a lot of stuff.
Which is
A lot of
messy,
unknowns. It's
all the
messy and
time.
complicated, and you have to be able to figure it. I mean, they're smart people. They can figure out the process of lining up the contractors and signage and things like that. I empathize with the desire. I just don't think it's compelling enough for us to spend any more time on.
Should I weigh in on a legal perspective?
Sure.
I just want to weigh in from a legal perspective. You know, the owner of these billboards have rights in these billboards until they're abandoned. So from my perspective, until it's been abandoned and removed, they still have legal rights to it. So if we've let them go digital, now they've got rights in that one too. And now they have rights in the one that's still standing. The whole point of this is to ensure that they're abandoning legal rights in order to acquire additional legal rights somewhere else. So from a legal perspective, I think it's much cleaner and it eliminates any rights to the so-called about to be abandoned billboards.
Yeah, yes.
Is there anything else from commissioners? Do you have any questions of the proponent for this?
When removing a billboard, is the common practice to obtain a demolition permit? So,
Yes, but we acquiesce,
yes, but
I appreciate the question, Shannon. I know tough sledding, I see it. I would love to continue discussion on the 10X because that goes to 5 billion.
It's I mean, I'm okay talking about that at another time as well. You've said your piece on that, correct?
Yes.
I don't think any of the commissioners haven't posed a question about that yet,
Right.
so. I don't know that anyone has any questions. I don't have a question about that yet. Any other questions of the proponent on this before we hear the staff report and open up to some public comment and discussion? Okay, Let's hear the staff report and then we will open up the public comments.
Okay, so we have discussed the our proposal as laid out in the staff report. And so just like the last item, this is a recommendation to the city council. And with your recommendation needs to come findings of consistency with the comprehensive plan and the purposes of zoning. So we're making these comments with respect to our suggested language. We're calling it the revised proposal. The revised proposal for the ordinance amendment is consistent with objective BE3 of Providence's comprehensive plan, which aims to reinforce the design, quality, function, and character of connections along public places and centers of activity. It also conforms to Section 101, Part B of the zoning ordinance, which states that the purpose of the ordinance is to provide a range of uses and intensities of use appropriate to the character of the city or town and reflecting current and expected future needs. And it's further consistent with Section 101E, which assures the protection of the natural, historic, cultural, and scenic character of the city or areas of the municipality. So our recommendation is that you advise the city council to approve an amendment to the zoning ordinance that contains the language we have in the staff report in replacing or adding a 2005 F with items 1 through 7 following, and that B, the proposal for payment to the city be stricken.
All right, thank you, Mr. Azar. This is a public hearing, so we will open this up to public comment at this time. If there are any members of the public in the physical room who wish to speak on this agenda item, we don't have any on the sign-in sheet, but if you'd like to, please stand up and make your way to the podium now. And if you're joining us in the virtual room, please raise your virtual hand or press *9 if you are calling in. Seeing none online or in the physical room, we will close the public comment portion of this agenda item. Commissioners. I mean, I think this is probably a pretty valuable proposition to the proponent of this. I think everything is fine in this. I don't think we need to discuss anything about B. And I don't think 10 times the amount of square footage is offensive. I think, you know, the idea is that they're going to put up something. I don't know that there's a good or bad number. You're kind of throwing a dart in my mind.
Not looking for the goal of the city is still
to remove 10 times the amount that they put up one EMC sign, electronic message sign.
Well, essentially, you know.
Yeah.
Well, I give them 20 acts that we could prohibit any person in you in terms of some. I
don't think we
could do that.
I'm pretty sure that the attorney representing us would say that that was a joke. I don't mean this.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah. Let's not implicate the first one.
Use your dumb button over there for them.
Is there any discussion, any thoughts, I mean, I'd entertain a motion to pass it as recommended by the staff report to the city council for approval.
Or you just say one last thing on 10X.
I'll allow you one more comment. Yes.
I appreciate that. I think requesting 10X would help those on. So, the city's up against the viability. Frankly, there's value in the signs being taken down. Bringing it down something like 5X, instead 5X square foot will come down. 10X? We don't think so.
Well, I think that, you have an audience with the city council that you can make that case for if this gets out of here. They're the ones who are gonna decide, and they often, decide contrary to what we recommend anyway. So they will have their own hearing process and ability to, think about what they want as a carrot. You know, I think, the EMC signs that are right, and they're very visible. You get a lot of messages on them. You can charge a lot, I'm sure, to get the multiple messages on while you get the eyeballs going down 95. I mean, it's, I think there's a will, there's a way. I don't know if there's any more I want to say on that one. Any other comments or maybe a motion for the recommended or as proposed, or
I'll make a motion to recommend this to the city council
as drafted,
as drafted
based on the findings in the staff report?
based on the findings in the staff report.
We have a motion.
Drafted where?
As drafted by the in the staff.
DPD. As drafted in the staff report, based on the findings in the staff report.
Yeah, that's what it means.
Yeah, they're recommended by DPD.
I'll second.
Go around and do a vote. Lindsay? Noah?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Sid?
Aye.
And I vote aye.
Thank you.
Good luck at city council. And then that is our last agenda item. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. We'll see you on August 18th.